Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Creative Connection podcast. Hopefully you've been enjoying all the previous episodes, and if you haven't listened to them yet, you can go back and listen to all of them, okay? There's 4 previous ones, all super interesting. I know that because I was a part of them myself, and I've listened to them all back, and at no point did I think, I regret making these. Every time I listen back, I'm like, wow, I'm fine, but these guests I have are really interesting and make this podcast really great. Without them, it would just be me saying nothing. Well, a lot of reallys, actually. I say a lot of really. I'm learning a lot of things about myself when I listen back. The Creative Connection podcast is all about creativity as a whole. There's a major focus on the creative process. Each episode has a different guest on within like a different kind of creative industry. I sit them down, we have these like open, raw conversations about their creative process within said industry, kind of that industry as a whole and how they got there. Really, really interesting conversations specifically for creative people, but I think if you're interested in the industry or the person I'm guesting, it's still interesting. Or even if you just kind of like listen, you just want to sit back and listen to something that's about something specific, something that technically can help you in terms of learning about new stuff, rather than like a podcast where people are just chatting about what they had for breakfast. So that's kind of what I'm trying to bring. The guest today is an architect called Pierre. He studied at the Royal College of Art. He's at an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, which is essential for actually becoming an architect. He's just starting up a new architectural project at the moment, and also something that I think is really interesting is a school of critical thinking. But it's called School of Speculation, SOS for short, and it's all about allowing people to kind of experience creativity without kind of restrictions and learn critical thinking, which I think is something super important, super necessary in this current time. We talk about all of that, and I really enjoyed having this conversation. I think Pierre's a great guy, really fitting for this podcast because he has a lot to say about creativity as a whole, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. So, without further ado, I'm gonna go. I'll meet you around the back for a little sign off, but enjoy the episode. Hey Pierre,
hey. Thank
you for joining me on an episode of Creative Connection, dude. It's an absolute pleasure. Are you excited to be here?
Yeah. Thanks so much for asking me.
It's good. I like that you're hosting me. This is nice. You got nice little digs, dude.
Yeah. I'm quite lucky here. It's nice.
You brought me a beer on the job, dude. You brought me a beer on the job. I like that. It's you've opened us up to a level of vulnerability we haven't had on this podcast yet.
Really?
This is the first level of intoxication ever.
Okay.
Now, I have been highly caffeinated before, and I'm not going to lie, I'm highly caffeinated now too, because it's like 8 o'clock and there's no way I'm doing this without coffee.
Okay, and the mix is good. The mix can work for you.
I think so. Is it like the Red Bull and vodka? It's like the same thing. So it's gonna. I'm off the chain. I'm ready to talk about some serious creative shiznick.
Okay.
Hopefully you're on that level of mindset too.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is very easy for you. Usually I ask people like, so how would you like describe what you do? But I think you've just got a title, and that's architect. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I am most of the time.
Well, I mean, I'm not even quite an architect yet.
Oh, okay. Half-architect.
Yeah, half-architect.
You're half-architect.
I'm still studying, so...
Right.
Architect's a weird, like, funny title that's only given to you after a load of exams that I'm yet to do. So officially, I'm an architectural assistant.
Oh, that's not as cool sounding.
No, unfortunately not.
No, I'm going to have to rechange all of the description on this. Architectural assistant.
No, please don't. Okay. I prefer architect.
Okay, yeah, the architect.
But don't take this to the lawyers.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have any. So. Turns out those guys are expensive and I don't have any money. So you're an architectural assistant. What does that entail, dude? What are your main duties?
Man, like day to day, it's actually, I guess like anyone would say, it's quite boring.
Same.
Yeah. So an assistant, basically I'm just helping out the architect with their duties. So, I mean, projects go on for years. So our work ranges from concept design, which is probably my favorite.
Yeah, well, that's perfect because that sounds very creative.
Yeah, that's where you've kind of got the freedom to express yourself completely.
Yeah.
there's not quite a budget set, so you're not having to like value stuff out of the project. There's also, you're part of a bigger team as well, so I guess the kind of creative process is shared, which I enjoy as well.
Oh really? You like teamwork?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you find that teamwork makes the dream work?
I think it's the only way.
I like teamwork too. I do a lot of solo stuff, but I really like being in a team.
Yeah. I mean, some people might say differently, but I think as a team, you can throw ideas against each other, have ideas thrown back at the wall.
Yeah.
Like
like a little filter.
Yeah,
you don't have that. Sometimes I have really bad ideas, but I don't know they're bad ideas.
Exactly.
Because no one's told me that. So then I go and do something, and then I finish it, and I'm like, why did I do that?
Exactly.
So you need that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need someone to tell you wrong. But also, it's like you shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes as well. I think that's like a really big...
Yeah?
Yeah, totally. You have to make mistakes.
Wow, thank fuck for that.
Yeah, definitely. And like you can't be afraid to make the mistake.
Yeah. How did you get into architecture? 'Cause were you always creative as a child? Is it something you're always interested?
Yeah. I think I'm quite lucky because I've always wanted to do it.
Yeah, man.
I can't remember a time when I didn't want to do architecture or be an architect. That's quite weird.
It's so useful because so many kids are just like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
I have no idea. They're all stressing out and they're going to uni doing courses that aren't going to help them in the long run.
Yeah, I do feel quite lucky.
100%.
It does make me question sometimes if it's been a valid choice though.
Really?
Well, if it's
always been there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
If it's something that I've always wanted to do since like the age of 8 or 9, whatever, like, am I still that 9-year-old kid? Obviously not. So like, maybe I've made the wrong decision. I don't know. I'm enjoying it for now.
I think, yeah, as long as you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. So what got you, like, you just look at buildings and like, I want to make that? You had a, because I don't, well, this is going to sound douchey now. I'm with an architect. I look at a building and I think, cool. But you must look at a building and think, oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's definitely developed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think I probably started a bit like you.
Yeah.
There must have been some projects I was doing at school that reinforced my interest in architecture. I can remember some like photography courses where I could literally just take nice photographs of buildings, and
really
that must have been like a good way in, I think.
Yeah, right. So you kind of getting a different kind of appreciation because you're seeing them from a different lens and whatnot.
Yeah,
through a lens.
Yeah,
seeing it completely different than if you're just walking down the street.
Yeah, because then you've got the time to really appreciate what you're looking at.
Yeah,
and especially you're thinking about like composition and stuff. So
yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah, completely putting it in a different frame.
Yeah,
it gives you a whole new perspective.
Yeah, or like a focus.
Yeah, true. Do you have a favorite building? This is our hearty banter before we get into the meat of it all.
That's like, I think it's every architect's worst
really
question.
Your favorite building?
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't think it's a good question for anyone. I think it might be a worse for someone who's not an architect. What's your favorite building?
Oh man,
I don't know, dude. Quite like my house.
Whenever I see something good and new, I'll be like, yes, that's it. That's my favorite building. But then whenever you ask that question, it escapes me.
I bet it's a bit like fashion. Buildings are always changing style. Is that a true thing to say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Do you like older buildings or you like new buildings, or can you not even compare the two?
No, I think you can.
It's good to know.
But I think the style changes, but then also my taste changes. So
yeah,
if you'd asked me last year what my favorite building was, I probably would have said some like random Italian mid-century concrete beautiful masterpiece. But then now maybe my taste has changed somewhat. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to say the Millennium Dome.
Okay. A respectable answer.
I think it's pretty awesome, or at least the concept behind it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, questionable, but I think at the time, the technology that was put into it, the reasons for it, I think were all like really, really, really valid, really great. So maybe one of them.
Listen, I have nothing to back up whether that's a good or bad answer. So I think it sounds great. My frame of reference for architecture is me and Adam did like a TV shoot earlier this year and we got flown out to Glasgow, and we're not very sociable people. And we got put next to, on the plane, we got put next to this dude who was sociable. And we heard so many stories about architecture. It was great. Did you know there was a building that a fox was just built into in Glasgow? I heard about that.
Was he an architect?
He was an architect and he loved it. He really liked it.
This building sounds interesting. I've not heard of this one.
It wasn't intentional, but it's just there. It's just like a fox in that building.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. It sounds like it was quite old.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what building it was. I'm pretty sure it was in Glasgow though. You should probably Google it. And it would probably be an underwhelming story, which is what I thought at the time. But yeah, I had to pretend I was interested.
Yeah, obviously. Well, you sat next
to him. A fox? Yeah, I sat right next to him. I wanted to put my headphones on and just chill, and he's like, let me tell you about this fox.
How long was the plane journey?
I don't know, like 40 minutes. I think it wasn't bad. It was only like London to Glasgow.
Yeah.
So it was fine. But that's my frame of reference when it comes to architecture.
Fox.
Yeah, there's a fox in a building, and I think that was a good thing. But it's on paper, it seems like it's a bad thing. But I suppose it made history.
Yeah.
Can you imagine you like spend ages on a building and then people remember it because someone accidentally cemented a fox into it?
It's kind of those weird little things that sometimes make it or break it.
Yeah,
things that you're like out of your control.
Yeah, like there's a fox in it. Let's tear it down. It's ruined.
Or yes, that's the most amazing thing you've ever done.
And people tell you about it on a plane. That's how excited people are about this building. So yeah, hopefully one day you get a fox in one of your buildings.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. Or you could. I think you should like double down and get for like a cooler animal.
Yeah,
like,
I wonder what.
Imagine getting a kangaroo in there. That would be crazy obscure because they'd be like, how did that even happen?
Yeah, or like an elephant or something really stupid.
That is true. That would be. I think that would be cooler. I don't know if there's anything. I feel like a seal would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Or a whale.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you get like a big old whale.
Well, I mean, Natural History Museum, they've done it.
Yeah, and that building is very recognizable, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I think it's because of the whale.
Yeah. They've done really well there. That thing's awesome.
Like the whale or the whole building?
The whale.
Yeah, dude. It's a big old whale. Do you know how big whales were?
Yeah.
Big dudes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like hanging from the ceiling or some shit.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is really cool. I like the Natural History Museum.
Yeah.
I don't really go that much. I wanted to talk about, because I don't really, like I said, that's my frame of reference, so I don't know too much about architecture, but you mentioned earlier, and I was thinking about this a while ago, like, the projects are long, because obviously, how long does it take to go from conception to actually beginning to build it?
Yeah. Even?
Because the construction, I imagine, takes ages, depending on the building.
Yeah, it all just depends on the build, the project.
Yeah.
So I've just started a project in East London. It's for a theatre company, and they're basically going to reuse some old warehouse space. And they've asked us to fit it out, but also provide a temporary kind of pavilion style building on the outside of it. So that's just gone through planning, and its lifespan is only 7 years. So it's going to be built in a couple of months, and maybe we've spent a year in total in designing and producing the drawings for it to be costed and then given to the contractor. So that's an example of a really short
Oh, really? So
build.
That's not average.
No way.
Sure.
That's a fast-paced one as well.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, they just go on for years. So there's a project that's been in the office for 5 years and hasn't gone through planning yet. So
really?
Beyond planning, there might be another 3-4 years. So that would be like a 10-year build.
Mad.
Is
that plus construction on that?
Construction will probably be within the 10 years,
okay.
I expect.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, some of the great architects of the 20th century spent 20 years designing, developing, building a relationship with the client, and then construction. So
is building relationships that's super important.
Yeah,
I suppose because you're building to spec.
Oh yeah, it's totally. I think just like, well, I mean, for a start, it's such an expensive thing to invest in. The client needs to get it right.
Yeah.
And also things like housing, the profit margins are so tight. The relationship between the architect and the client is just like crucial. It just needs to be right.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of like kickback from clients being like, because I get this in video work where they have an idea that they think is really sick, but you just know it isn't.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to navigate that situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, well, what if we? That's a good idea. Now listen, we'll put a pin in that. What if we did this?
Yeah, I think there's so much of persuading involved.
Yeah, definitely.
That you're not even trained about. Or
yeah, right. That's not told in your.
way.
What was it like 6 years of school? Is it?
Yeah.
Is that
so
right?
yeah, it's 5 years in full-time education,
right,
and then a year as a kind of professional qualification that you do in at the same time as working.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's some experience that you do as well that's part of the training. So minimum you can do it in, I think it's 7 years minimum. Because
Abby's my sister. His boyfriend is just trained to be an architect now, and he's just come out of doing his employment, so now he's going into for the masters.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, so I've been kind of following that. So he's just done his undergrad and then he did that. And it is a really it's a long time. It's probably like one of the longest courses. I suppose medicine as well.
It's there with medicine.
Yeah. Like I don't know anything about it. I think it's really cool that it requires you to work. And I think that seems like a really like good advantage over most people, because most people kind of come out with like no experience. And they're kind of like fucked. But an architect, you have at least a year of work, and then I imagine in a lot of circumstances, the person they worked with will probably try and bring it back. I think that's what happened to you. Is that?
Yeah.
I think that happened to Matt as well.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean. It's a whole debate at the moment as to whether it's too long.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of a perpetual debate as well. It never really goes away.
Yeah.
But it depends on who you ask. So some people are really for training people for work, and they think that the current system is too long because it teaches you 3 years of, or even 5 years of just kind of concept design stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're thrown into the world, and then you realise you don't know anything.
Yeah, right.
And I get that argument, but I'm still really for spending as long as you can in an environment where your ideas can just be like completely let loose. I think it's so like there's so much freedom there.
Yeah.
That it's just beneficial for anyone to like go through that kind of process.
You think so?
Yeah, totally.
I think that's a good point. To just really just make what they need to, just experience the full flow of creativity without any blocks in the way.
Yeah, and to be encouraged to go as far as you can with that, because I think that's when like fundamentals maybe start to get questioned, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's kind of like breaking societal walls.
Yeah,
and just like making stuff.
Yeah,
it's like pushing yourself as well, but also the limits of what already exists.
Yeah,
because there's nothing else to do.
Yeah, I mean that's why universities have always been the place of new ideas and people pushing the boundaries, like you say.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real shame that we're kind of moving towards training for work.
Yeah, like more vocational stuff. You mean?
Yeah.
You're nodding your head. Is that you're not sure?
Yeah, I don't know if the word vocational is quite what I mean, but certainly in the arts and creative industries, we can't train people for the workplace. It's like the most like dangerous thing.
You think it kind of ingrains a different kind of mindset to people a little bit?
Yeah, it just starts putting the walls around them.
Yeah,
and they
right.
haven't even appreciated where they could go with their process, or they're not even given the opportunity to work out what the process might be.
Yeah, and is that partially because they're being trained to process it in a certain way? They're being trained what their process is. Like, if, for example, if you're an apprentice, you're kind of learning your master's. I'm putting that in quotes because I don't know what the right word is.
Yeah,
You're learning his exact like creative process and how he works, and you're kind of just copying it. Is that kind of what you mean?
what I mean is more like bringing in the I don't know, like real life parameters into this educational space. So, you know, take like an architectural student project. I don't think it'd be very beneficial if your tutors were asking you to think about cost and...
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean, because, yeah.
I just don't think it's relevant. It limits your potential.
Absolutely. Yeah, restriction. I think you said that earlier, and that is exactly what it is. You're restricting that creativity by things that shouldn't really affect it. So you can't push yourself out there further. You're just kind of stuck in these little... you said walls, and I think that's a great... Now that I understand exactly what you mean, I think that is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it to begin with.
Come on.
Step up, Jared. I'm meant to be some kind of sick broadcast journalist.
But that's what I'm trying to set up with my colleague Kish with the so we call it the School of Speculation, or SOS, because
Dope.
we think that design education is kind of reaching this SOS moment where people are just being trained for the workplace too much. We think we kind of need to step back a bit and just realize how good it is for people to be thinking a bit more critically about what they're doing.
Right. Rather than just getting sucked into the system that everyone else has been doing.
Yeah.
No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, school should be there to help you develop your process and develop your questioning, and you should always be thinking about, like, is this the right thing? Is that the right thing? Rather than being told what the right thing is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's... You know, I've always thought... This is a completely different mindset to I have. And I'm not saying either. I feel like yours might be right and mine's wrong.
No,
there's probably not a right answer.
There's no right or wrong.
But at the moment, it feels like you're right. You're very convincing. You sell a good argument. But I like to think that restriction kind of enhances creativity a little bit. Like time limits, for example, it puts your brain in overdrive, and there's that pressure and that stress where you've kind of just got to knuckle down and make something. And I like working under that kind of circumstance. I feel like that is an advantage for me. I feel like otherwise I kind of get a little bit complacent when it comes to having too much time, and sometimes I think too big, which is kind of what you're saying, like think bigger. Sometimes I think too big, and then it's like I don't know how to rein this in.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just I get overwhelmed because there's so many places I can take it, and I kind of just struggle, like, how do I kind of put my own restrictions on this so I know exactly what I want to do with it, and how do I actually make it. So I feel like a time restriction, especially, I suppose more so than I think costing and stuff, is kind of good for how I work. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, okay, you do.
Yeah, I think there we can definitely agree.
Okay.
Time as well works for me. Having to meet the deadline, the pressure of...
That's it. It just gives you that get up and go.
Yeah.
Which I just it's not that I don't have it, it's just that I've got so many ideas. I just really struggle like narrowing it down and just getting on it.
Yeah.
Or it's just like it's like a big old cloud, and there's just so much shit in that cloud, like an iPhone cloud, I mean.
Yeah.
Like, just all my photos are just chilling the fuck up there.
Yeah.
And I can't get one because they're just all in my eyes, and I can't focus on one. That's kind of what it's like.
Yeah, it's totally overwhelming. But I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. I think a mixture of the two. Like, I think it's really empowering to be overwhelmed because, I think you do need to have that sense of like losing control a bit. I think it does help you give give you focus, strangely. I think it's also quite healthy because it means that you're trying to assess like every option. And I know it might seem a bit manic at times, but you eventually, you rein it in, and the time pressure helps you do that, definitely.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, but kind of having that sense of like loss. Or
That's
like,
interesting.
Yeah, but I definitely agree that the time pressure is great, and it always runs to the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. You're always like of their last minute, just working out, like something's not quite finished, and just gassing on. All nighter on the final day of a deadline.
Always,
100%, and that is the way it should be. I think.
Yeah,
I like it. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah,
I think it is. Otherwise, you just get, Otherwise, it's just like you might as well be in a bank. You know what I mean?
Yeah, things might get too comfortable.
Yeah.
Which I guess that is what I'm saying. Is like, if you're overwhelmed and you're like completely like bewildered, you don't know what you're doing, it's kind of the opposite to being comfortable. Yeah. And that's the danger zone.
Yeah, you're right. Comfortableness is the danger zone. It keeps you on the toes. I've been saying this for a while. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast yet, but I think creativity works best around like change. And I think as soon as you get too comfortable in what you're doing, your environment, it's time to like force a change. Otherwise, you're kind of like stagnant and kind of you can't make those new like connections and branchways or whatever, and you're kind of just stuck doing the same thing. Yeah, that's kind of where I've been this last year. I kind of hit a wall early this year, just a bit like I don't know what to do. Nothing's really like sick. Nothing's exciting me. I'm just kind of like wading through this like life, and then I was like. I worked out why. I worked out it's because I was bored of what I was doing. It was too easy. It wasn't really working. So then I was like, I'm just going to fucking make some moves.
Yeah, shake it up.
Just completely shake it up. I took on some projects that were way over my head.
See what I mean?
Just do it.
Yeah, so you do have like, you do agree with me that losing it or like being in the deep end.
No, definitely.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean.
I think you're absolutely right. As soon as you're comfortable, you're not really pushing yourself out there, and you're not advancing. Because I think as long as you're struggling, you're always pushing yourself and like coming up with new solutions and getting better. Yeah. As soon as you're just doing the same thing every day, I don't really think you're improving anything.
Yeah, getting wrong and then getting better.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, I completely agree with you there. You push yourself out further and get into that state of overwhelmness. Yeah, which you know what? I like this podcast. I learn new things about myself.
Happy to share.
Yeah, it's good, dude. I told you before we started, didn't I? Today we're going to change lives.
Yeah, we're changing the world here.
We're currently changing the world. Everyone listening is just, their minds are blown. They're just sitting doing like the most mundane thing, like the easiest thing because it's, easy living. Why not?
Who are these guys?
They've only just realized that they need to push themselves. Yeah. And you're welcome. It is good though. No, it is good because like I was saying earlier, I don't want to go into it, but I was saying earlier I was like super stressed. And that's because this project is like one of the biggest things I've done. But ultimately, it's like going to be super rewarding when it's done because I would have pushed myself and like gain new experience, and I'm just using my brain in a way that hasn't really been used in for a while. Just like it's problem solving. And it's just that kind of thing. I'm doing a project right now, which is also way bigger than anything I've done before. And that's crazy exciting. And I'm stressed about it. I get stressed very quickly, it turns out. School, I didn't. School didn't matter. Yeah. I didn't get stressed at school. Yeah. It was probably a bad thing because I did 3 years instead of 2. But that's fine. But now I'm in the real world. I'm just like, ah. But I do think that's a good thing. And I think you're right about it. Because it's keeping me on my toes. It's keeping me ready. It's keeping me like excited as well. Yeah. Like, when you can't really get bored when you're stressed, I don't think. Because it's just always like, you're on your mind. You're like, how do I fix this? And it's quite exciting. Yeah, and you're stressed because you care as well. That's it. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Which isn't a bad thing. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, if I didn't care, I wouldn't be. That's exactly what it was with A-levels, actually. I just didn't care. Like, it doesn't affect me because I know what I want to do and I don't need these. Yeah. I'm not learning anything useful. Maybe it wasn't real enough. You couldn't see the real, like, I don't know, not the benefits. What am I trying to say? Like, you couldn't see the outcome of what you were doing, what you were learning. Yeah. Like, it didn't seem applicable. Yeah, that's it. Which I'm only 21, but I stand by it. Yeah. I like school, but I didn't learn anything that I'm using now that was useful. I found certain things fascinating, but not fascinating enough to do well on my exams.
What do you mean? You don't know like the how many hydrogen atoms are connected to the oxygen
in my
in the water
chains? Yeah, dude. I just spurred that out just
we need
this
that
morning.
all the time.
This morning, the person on the train was like, "Hey, how many hydrogens?" I'm like, 23 bonds, and he left. He was wearing a lab coat and goggles. I don't know what the fuck he was doing. He was some kind of science experiment or something. But then he just left out the door. So no, I don't need that.
Yeah, you don't.
But maybe I should have tried harder. It doesn't really matter now.
But I think it definitely did. I think it's part of my argument that maybe you couldn't see the real life application, but it has taught you maybe not like the logic to question something, or the logic behind the information maybe is the more important thing you learn. Or
yeah, that's fair.
I think that's what we're trying to get out with SOS. It's like it's just giving people the kind of tools to analyze or like create a method for themselves.
Tell me a little bit more about SOS.
So
because I think it's a really cool light signing project.
Yeah, no,
and I think it's really necessary in this like ecosphere as well.
We're so excited about it. It's something that we're just setting up now. We have got a couple of like really big institutions who are interested in partnering up with us, but we're effectively trying to give not an alternative to higher education, but something that might supplement people in higher education.
Sure.
We think definitely in architecture school there isn't enough debate about politics or around the bigger questions that our work involves, or just kind of like the really interesting questions about society. We don't think there's enough chat about it, and it's definitely applicable to design. It's like design is, I think, a product of all this kind of debate in society. And like we were saying a bit earlier, I think universities are kind of honing in on creating a more like skilled student ready for work.
Yeah.
So we think this could kind of slot in where there are gaps.
Yeah, right.
In higher education.
And kind of give them a chance to be more creative.
Yeah.
You mean? Yeah, less restrictions, more like find who you are creatively.
Yeah.
Push your limits. And
get people to just question.
Yeah. So you a big thing of yours is questioning the norms, if you will. Like, why are we doing this? Is that?
I think it's so important.
Yeah. I think so. I've never really thought about it too much until I when I was a kid, I always just went with the flow. Like my teachers, I was just like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
As I've grown, I've been more like, yeah, but why would I do that?
Yeah. We should just not stop thinking like that.
Is that your mindset all the time then? Like, do you think you're always like questioning things you see, or things that happen, or things people say?
Yeah, I think I do. Maybe a bit too much.
You think too much?
Yeah, I think sometimes.
Why did he say my hair looks nice? What was he trying to prove?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it gets in the way of things sometimes. Yeah, maybe I overdo it, but I don't think there's enough of it in school, especially not architecture and design school.
Yeah, I don't think it's a system that is designed for questioning. I don't think that they push that as even being an option. I think it's quite militant. Is that the word, militant? Is that?
Yeah, it could be seen like that. Yeah.
Because it's like, you would do this, and no questions, you will do it, and that's just how this works because I'm in charge. And I don't think it really allows for any kind of like, okay, but I don't think that's a good solution. What if I did it like this? I think it is just like, you would do it exactly how I tell you, and if you don't, you got to sit in a dark room for an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I was never put into a dark room.
You weren't?
Forcibly. I definitely did go into many dark rooms to work during school. Never forcibly.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's too militant, and obviously some schools do it better than others. There's just not enough of like what we're trying to provide.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, we're really, really excited about it. our first project is to run a summer school in summer 2019.
Nice.
So our applications are going to open at the end of 2018 this year.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have secured some partners, some like big galleries and institutions that are going to support us with some space. We're just going to chat about all this stuff, like the creative but critical questioning process of design, and then hopefully put on a banging exhibition at the end of it.
Yeah, man. I love that exposure. Like,
yes.
That would be really cool, actually. That'd be really sick.
Yeah.
Do you think that this critical questioning is something that affects more than just architecture? And do you think people could develop similar concepts for various other creative industries?
Yeah, totally.
Or do you think that's something that you might branch into as well?
Yeah, I don't think it's exclusive to architecture at all.
Sure.
It's actually something that's been developed. I mean, critical design as a theory or as a way of making things was developed like around the early 90s as a hybrid between product design and the art world. So it comes from something not totally unrelated to architecture, but is not architecture. So it's something that the art world, I think, does really well. Producing pieces of art that make you think about the present condition.
Yeah.
That all industries could take a leaf from. That's where it comes from, the critical design element.
Yeah. I think it's a really cool like project concept, because I said this earlier, I don't know anyone who's really like pushing it like that kind of learning, and I think it's really exciting that you're doing that, and I think it kind of works with everything I believe in as a creative, and I do think that it is a perfect conversation for this podcast.
Yeah.
So I like it's worked out very fortuitously.
Yeah, we haven't planned any of this.
No. I just genuinely think that that's a really like good thing to be teaching, and I think it's an important lesson for everyone, especially creatives. But just like now you brought it to my attention so eloquently that people need to not be like boxed in and just really express themselves and lose themselves in that cloud for a little bit.
Yeah, even if it's just for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I'm not kind of advocating that this is what everyone should be doing just all the time.
Yeah.
Because no, like obviously shit needs doing.
You were very specific about being like this. It's just something that slots in. It's nothing that this isn't like the main event or anything. This is just like another skill that people need to have.
Yeah.
How does that slot in? You mentioned summer schools. Is that kind of how you see it, or do you think that there's a place in the syllabus for it?
Well, we're just trying to draw up what the potential for it is at the moment.
Yeah.
We thought it would be a great summer school to start with, and that's what we're working towards for 2019. But we've definitely got a wider ambition, and we are thinking that it could be like a I don't know, like a unit or something that plugs into an existing course, or it's something that's like outsourced maybe from a university, or maybe not. Like we're really into it being quite an independent kind of free floaty kind of thing.
I think that's kind of on brand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so as well. We don't want to get too close to the established establishment.
No, you don't want to get close to that established establishment.
No, it'll get too establishy.
That's way too established. You can't be dealing with that.
No, we're definitely something else.
I think that's good, because there is a big push at the moment for said establishment. And I think the way the education system, it's really pushing against creatives at the moment. So, don't get too close to it.
No.
Because they'll eat you.
For some
reason that they hate creativity these days. You see about that? Like,
no.
The school that we went to, like, they've cut so many of the creative courses now. It's so academic driven.
Oh god, yeah, don't get started. Yeah. Arts funding is just like just being shrunk everywhere.
It's not even just the funding though. Like they're just like, we need results. We need to be like the best school with like
depressing
academic
is that?
results. It's horrible. I wouldn't be doing what I was doing if it wasn't for some of those creative courses.
It really actually winds me up because it's so short term based. Doing that isn't investing anything into your like the students' futures.
It's not at all. It's a very selfish move.
Yeah.
It frustrates me as well because, as I said, like it was so fundamental in terms of my growth as to what I like doing.
Yeah.
With some of those creative courses, and even by the time I was doing it, there wasn't that many. Jesus, what was that?
I don't know.
That was loud as fuck.
Yeah.
I think something just exploded outside.
That was, sorry about that.
What the fuck? Where are we?
Leafy Highgate.
Dude, something literally just exploded.
That was literally the loudest thing that's happened.
Did you see the flash?
In this neighborhood for about a month.
Something flashed, dude.
Really?
A month?
Yeah, that's really rare.
Dude, something like legit flashed.
I'm sure it was just like a firework or something.
What the fuck?
You're safe.
I'm just like, someone's car's exploded and we're just sitting here chatting about creativity. I've just like put my entire life in perspective. It's just like a massive raging fire outside. Just like, now tell me more about architecture.
No, we're good.
Just like people running around screaming. Jesus.
What were we even, I can't even remember what we were saying.
We were just complaining about the education system.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah, there's probably not much point going too much into the education system because it's
shot to pieces.
It's shot to pieces. Hopefully, it will make a change, though. I just think it is short-sighted, especially we mentioned this briefly off air, the rise of automation.
Yeah,
I do think that's going to have a large play in like creativity, and I just think axing all of those creative subjects isn't really going to help people. It's not even just like in terms of future, but also like development now. Like I feel like people develop a lot through experiencing their own creativity.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just get a whole bunch of like super robotic people doing jobs exactly how they're taught and not really like finding new ways. And there's just you don't really have advancements anymore.
Yeah.
Everything just stagnates and people are just doing everything the same. It's like being in a factory line. Which is what school is like anyway.
Yeah.
I just think that's kind of worsening. It's fuck. I should go back to school. I think I may have just killed my own argument by being an idiot.
No, definitely not. I completely agree with everything you said. I think
even the worsening bit.
Yeah, even the worsening.
Okay, thanks.
That's what makes you human.
You're right. I'm not a robot because I'm an idiot.
But bring on the robots. I think bring on automation.
I think so. I like I said, I think it's going to have a positive effect for creativity because there's going to be less options. So people are going to have to be like, people got to spend their time somehow. And I think creativity is how people are going to do that.
Yeah.
I think it gives people an option to.
Yeah. Yeah, we can look at it really positively and actually automation could bring a whole base of employment out of kind of this like really shitty, like you say, factory, like really menial task jobs, which like no one wants to do. It's horrible.
No, of course not.
Obviously people do it because they need the money.
Yeah.
And that's fair. But if they could be lifted into a whole different kind of sector of work or have their eyes open to something else that that could be like more stimulating for them but better for the economy, then I just think we should just be like gunning for it for their sake.
I think there's a lot of fear when it comes to automation.
Yeah.
I think it's the fear of people losing their jobs, which does seem strange because that is it can only be a good thing. Like obviously I can see why on paper it's a bad thing, but like what you're saying, like doing those shitty jobs, yeah, you'll lose it, but it gives more opportunity. And if there are an infrastructure in place to navigate that, then it can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
Like a living wage, like a national living wage, is a potential solution. Whether that works or not, I don't know, but that's a solution, because then you're making enough to live. You're not, freaking out, and anything else is like a Brucey bonus. So I think that is a potential, but I think the fear is it's understandable, but I think it's not deserved. I think people shouldn't be pushing back against it, because I think it is going to have a real positive effect on the world whenever it happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the example. We kind of, in this argument, it's the example of the Industrial Revolution that's always used. People's jobs and the way they lived completely changed because of the advancements in technology. And jobs were created, jobs were lost to technology, but society moved on.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would say probably for the better. So we're just having to like negotiate the next kind of wave of technological advancement, and society just has to it'll move.
Yeah, it has to move.
Yeah,
it's a lot of people, so I can understand why it takes so much time.
Yeah,
everyone's got to be like, right, let's do this.
And I do at the same time think that we shouldn't jump into it so fast, because there are details that probably do need working out. Like, there's this whole thing about like automation. These robots need to be taxed somehow. Maybe they're taxed the same way that someone who was doing the job before it was. There's also like questions on like the ethics of some of these like computer algorithms that might take on some person's job. It's really interesting stuff. Someone is effectively like writing that algorithm, so there's always a person at the end of it. Like the ethics around who writes that and what authority they have and whether it's checked, and like all of these are really valid, and it's just gonna have to be worked out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it can't happen until there's a system in place to allow it to happen, because it would just be absolute anarchy. I think it would be a disaster. And people I think are scared on the whole of AI, and I don't think that Hollywood cinema has helped that situation.
No, definitely not.
But it's all becoming so real, and we're not that far away from it being a reality. I mean, AI exists, but like proper, like decent AI.
Yeah, like deep mind shit.
Yeah, like we're not far away from it now. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know, because those movies have told me that it's a bad thing.
Yeah,
but that it could go either way. Let's talk about your creative process, because that's what we're here for. And I think this is what I think we should do. I think we should talk about it in response to the project you worked on. Okay. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, sure.
Or do you have any different ideas?
No, that would be a good place to start.
I think so. Go ahead. So I kind of like to do it like a bit by bit. So we're kind of starting. I don't really know how you begin an architect project. Were you brought on? Were you like helping conceptualize it? How did that all work to begin with?
So
it's like a story time. I'm just gonna shut my eyes for a bit.
So
my hot chocolate.
Yeah, get one for me as well, please.
That's good. I got it on a delivery. I think it might have been that bang.
So I guess, right. Well, I worked on a really amazing project called Bridge Theatre at the practice that I'm working with at the moment, Howth Tompkins, and that was, I think I started that as soon as I came out of my undergrad. Got into practice. There's a few months of doing bits and bobs kind of on the side, helping people, and then I landed like onto this team. And it was really fortunate. We've got like a great client. The client was the previous artistic directors at the National Theatre, and they'd kind of just started their their company called London Theatre Company, and this was their first building. So it was quite exciting because it was their first thing. I mean, the architectural creative process is defined by a series of work stages.
Okay, that makes it nice and easy for us.
Yeah. So, and they're numbered from 1 to 5.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Gee, I should have had more architects on.
That's the kind of industry standard. That's the industry standard process. So 1, this is going to be a bit of a test because I'm not even sure if I know them, but 1 to 2 is kind of concept.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's quite internally driven. You have kind of updates to the client, but it's more, we're looking at like the historical context of the site, what's been there before.
Oh, really? That plays a big part, does it?
Yeah, totally. We want the building to feel right for where it is.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is like learning about what's been before.
Sure.
And so we're looking for kind of all sorts of clues. This particular site was really interesting because it was the site of an old pottery factory. Okay. So actually in the excavations of the site, they'd found tons of bits of like clay pottery. So that was quite a big inspiration for us at the kind of early stages.
Sure.
And that helps us think about materials, like what is this thing going to be made of? What's it going to feel like? There's so much stuff we're looking at the beginning. We're looking at like who else is around us, who is kind of the adjacent commercial buildings. How is the theatre going to interact with those? But I would say materials is a big thing that we start off with. And it's just straight to paper, and we'll be drawing out from plan. So like, it's all quite diagrammatical, like floor plans, and we'll start with a couple of sections, which is like cuts through the building, which help us think about your movement up and down space, as well as kind of the plan gives you
because it is a 3D space, so you have to think about all of that on a 2D plane, which is kind of weird. And more and more buildings are designed straight from 3D computer software. That makes sense to me. I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. That must have been a great technological advancement when it comes to architecture. And that was could happen.
We're kind of entering this age where these 3D models are now shared between the architect and then all the other kind of project members of the design team. So the structural engineer, the mechanical engineer, services engineer, maybe an interior designer. And that speeds up the process, I imagine, does it? It does
has access to it?
It does at the later work stages. So if what I talked about was kind of the early stages, then basically what you're doing is through the work stages, you're just adding more detail into your drawings, and you're regularly updating the client, and you're eventually at a stage 4 where you've got a full set of drawings that hopefully you've brought some of the energy of the early concept design through into, the most minute details of the building, hopefully. And you've produced a series of drawings that can then be given to the contractor and then built. And that's your stage 5, and then you're on site and it's all hands on deck.
Sure. So there's a lot of like layering in terms of like,
well, it's long, like we were saying.
Yeah, for real though. So how long did that project take actually?
That project 2 years from start to finish, which was quite quick. It was quite stressful.
It felt quick then.
It did.
Was that because It had to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're like we were saying earlier, like the time pressure helps to push you. So the client will, well, in this case, was like, well, look, we have a show to put on in the theatre that you're designing.
Yeah.
Which is not really something you deal with in other architectural projects. I think there's a bit of flexibility.
If you run over, it's not a massive deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Whereas this is like, okay, so this build, this design, this project, is going to cost 7 million, say, which was around. But their show that they were going to be putting into our project was going to cost them another like 500,000 million to produce and build and fund whatever. So it's like almost it's a huge percentage of the bill.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a lot of pressure for us to like have to get it done for. So yeah,
that is mad. Does that feel like unrealistic when you like accepted that project, or were you always like, that's just fun?
Well, I mean, I wasn't very experienced at the time, so I wasn't really like completely aware of the pressures that were on the architect and the directors to get this job done. I kind of was feeling it, but I mean, it's really on them.
Yeah,
those are the guys that are running it, and they did such a great job of it. But I think that we always knew that it was going to be doable.
Oh yeah. I like to think that you wouldn't have done it if you didn't. So I'm just curious about that as a time frame, whether that was really reasonable or not. To like proper like fucking gas it.
Well, I mean, I think there was a lot of pressure. But you just see it more and more, especially like commercial projects where there's a lot of money involved and deadlines to make and profits to be made as well.
Yeah, that's it. Business don't wait. Time is money, as they say.
No, like you just have to make it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, fair enough.
And if you don't, you put more resource on it until you make it.
Yeah, and then that. Yeah, okay. So there's options.
Yeah.
There's not really. You just do it. So, but in terms of like inspiration and stuff, you say you take a lot of inspiration from the buildings around it and what used to be there.
Yeah.
Which I think is important, and I've definitely noticed before. I think not so much in architecture, but in like, say a shop strip, for example, and you get all those like clashing color signs that they obviously haven't thought about synergy at all, and it's just like it just looks ugly. So I guess it's exactly the kind of the same thing, but with just proper buildings. So you want it to match. You don't want it to like look really like a sore thumb or anything.
Well, yeah, I guess it depends. Sometimes you would. Like, there's some amazing buildings that are amazing because they just stand out from the crowd, and they're just incredible. And then, sometimes it might be more appropriate for the building to just blend in with whatever's around it. It's really like, I think you just have to it's a case by case. It depends on so many factors. The client, obviously, one, but also, like, I don't know, the planning department, are they going to, because essentially they say yes or no to whatever we propose, so are they lenient to that kind of thing? Or,
okay, yeah, so they sometimes won't want it to stick out too much.
Yeah, totally, more often not.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you ever have to, if there's a client that really wants like a really like cool sticking out building, do you ever have to fight planning?
Yeah.
Like a lot to try and get it done? Or is there not much lenience?
I mean, I haven't worked on a project where we've had to do that.
Yeah.
But it happens a lot.
Yeah, sure.
And that's kind of where it can get a bit shady as well, because there's another part of the process where you engage with the planning authority, and they help you get it through the council.
Yeah.
And so you build a bit of a rapport with the planners, and the advisors, and I think this is where like persuasion comes into it, and you need to get them on your side, and it can. Yeah, I'm not saying there's bribery, but I don't know. Like you can get you want to get quite close to your planners. You want to know them quite well. You build
that friendship, and I think you get them on your side. You get them lobbying behind you.
Yeah, and obviously the more expensive the project, then the more the client will invest in, like you say, lobbying.
Yeah.
because they're like multi-million-pound investments.
Yeah.
So they want to get their dream like realized.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Like when I've watched Homes Under Hammer.
So you know.
So I understand this. I understand where they're coming from, all right? You know, you spend all this money. I've seen them spend all this money. They want a good freaking home.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just spend more money than they have, but because they want that nice home,
yeah,
they don't cut corners.
Yeah.
And you've got to respect someone who doesn't cut corners.
Yeah.
They just get their dream house.
Yeah.
And I like that show. You watch a lot of that?
I don't know.
Really?
No, I don't.
You're going to be on it one day? Is that your dream? Is that your aspiration?
I'm going to say no.
Okay, well. I think you should aim a little bit higher, but fine.
Yeah.
I think in terms of inspiration elsewhere, how big a part does that play in designing buildings for you?
Yeah. I think it's really important to get like a holistic view of design. So yeah, my girlfriend's a menswear designer. I'm always like having a look at what she's doing, the latest stuff at her office and what she's interested in. I think it's all part of the same, like, I don't know, like contemporary condition. You want to know what's happening in other circles because I think it all talks to each other. I don't know how directly it influences what I do though. That's quite like an abstract kind of answer. But I don't know how Laura's like latest shirt can help me or influence the like wall design for the theatre. Yeah, I don't know.
Could be a thing.
Just like buttons and a collar on the wall. Yeah.
Sometimes you got to push the boundaries of society to make great stuff. Didn't we establish that?
We did.
So there we go. Buttons on the wall. I'm looking forward to it. In terms of other buildings, though, how about that? Do you have like a repertoire in your head of like other buildings that are like, this is my inspiration?
It's back to the favourite building question. Is that what you're...
I just want to know
just,
what
like, really want to know, don't you?
You said the Millennium Dome, but you didn't seem convinced.
Yeah, that just like...
I'm looking for a definitive building.
I don't know where that came from.
I'm looking for a postcard to give you for your birthday. So I was going to get your favourite building on it. And now I've ruined the surprise.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because you can
really
say it doesn't inspire you. Like, you don't...
No, I don't think that... I definitely don't think that's true.
Okay.
I'm just going to have to, like, sit on the fence again and be like, it depends on the context of the project.
That's understandable.
I think that's where the best design comes out. It's when you're not bringing to the table a whole load of...
Yeah, right.
Preconceived, like...
You're more flexible.
Yeah.
You can kind of go with the flow a little bit more.
Yeah.
Do what needs to be done at the time. Adaptable.
Yeah. So you're like hunting around for inspiration when you need it.
Okay. So you're not coming in with like a whole bunch of inspirations. You're waiting until the idea kind of forms, then maybe you outsource a little bit to pull certain things here and there.
Yeah, but there's obviously like the classics that will never go away. So I mean, Le Corbusier was like a 20th century architect who's just designed some of the best apartment buildings, but also like churches and kind of all sorts that I think every architect draws inspiration from, just because they're just classics. Yeah. So you do bring a certain amount to the table before you start a project. But they're almost like they've almost become like standards or like ideals that people work to. Yeah,
sure. Do you think it might be hard to say, but do you consider architecture to be subjective, or do you think there's like a massive norm when it comes to architecture? I think everyone's kind of on the same page.
You mean when we're designing, or like the
just like when you look at a
interpretation?
building, maybe you're like, this is a good building.
Yeah, completely.
Or you're like, this is a bit shit.
Yeah, no, completely subjective.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, but I figured anything.
so, but I thought I'd just check.
Yeah,
I'm
think.
new to architecture.
Yeah, well, I mean, your idea of what's good and what's bad is different to mine. I think we've got different tastes, and I mean, it's just like as simple as you and me being different. We're gonna have a different opinion on like whether it's good or not. That's what makes, I think, cities so interesting, especially over time. Is you just get a build up of what you might think is like completely horrible next to what you might think is absolutely beautiful.
Sure. How does it work then? Do you have that? Well, what that means to me is that certain architects will be better at certain things depending on the client. How does that work? Do clients usually speak to multiple architects and try and see where the wavelengths are at? Or is it kind of like luck of the draw? Or do architects have to be super malleable to work around, even if it's not exactly what they like?
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting question. I think clients should be shopping around a little bit to find what suits them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think a good architect should be able to like adapt.
Yeah.
And bring good design to any client. So I'd say that's what I work towards.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's. I'd like to think that it makes sense, and that's something that anyone should be doing. Like if they're working with clients, to kind of like adapt. But I do think that it's an interesting point that the client it should be like shopping around trying to meet different people, and I suppose a client would look at other people's work beforehand, and I suppose that is how they tell.
Yeah.
They'll, like look at folios or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, all right, this is the person. How much do you think relationships matter when it comes to building? Like, so the client and then is it the director? Is he in charge of the architect?
Yeah.
Or the build rather? Is that the director? He's like the man up top? Or is it someone else?
Usually.
Okay.
That's usually how it works. You have, I guess, the main relationship with the client would be either with the director of your practice or the project architect.
Sure.
Or it's shared.
Gotcha.
It depends on the size of the practice. So for me, at Howard Tompkins, the director has typically a pretty good relationship with the client. And that's more of a kind of quite informal relationship, whereas then the project architect who's actually running the day-to-day might have a more kind of practical relationship with the client. I think they're both really valid.
Yeah.
And depending on the size of the practice, you might have the architect doing both. Probably more often than not, they are doing both. And if you're in a really big practice as well, the director might not even have met the client. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
It's not something I really agree with, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe, I haven't worked at like a huge practice either, so probably couldn't say for sure. But I think a relationship with the client is just like a good one is vital, and I think you can tell when a building has had one.
Yeah, how so? Just by looking at the building?
No,
or you mean just looking at the whole experience?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I think just
I like the idea of you looking at a building.
Yeah, like bang.
Well, those guys obviously didn't get on, do they? Look at that.
I think just like the quality is a lot higher because there's an understanding between the two. Because
I think when it comes to client work, understanding is important. Because as you say, people want their building right. They're spending a lot of money. They want a right building. And I think without communication, without a firm understanding, and people being on the same page is obviously a massive advantage.
Yeah.
Which is why I was so curious about the relationship as a whole.
Yeah.
Because it seems like quite a corporate thing, architecture, but it's super creative. And as we've established, subjective as well.
Yeah.
So I do think that relationship must be super fundamental to making someone's dreams come true.
Yeah.
Just like Holmes and the Hammer.
Shut up. Yeah, no, I don't diss that program.
It's a good program.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if architecture, it's weird that you have for me it's strange that you have an association with architecture being corporate. It's very bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
my
think-
experience of it is like completely the other way.
Yeah. I think it's probably because for me, architecture is associated with businesses more than it is.
Yeah.
Rather, you're on the inside, so you deal with like the creative side. But for me, I'm like, here's a big corporation building a building, and for me, it's just like, oh, there's another bank.
Yeah.
They're just, it's a massive corporation. They got loads of money. They're getting a building done, and all I see is, hard hats and like high vis jackets, people up scaffolding. That's kind of my perspective on architecture as a whole.
Yeah.
Whereas you see people, your graphic book out or whatever, got some pens, paper, just drawing, sketching stuff out, programming stuff up, 3D renders and whatnot.
Yeah.
Sometimes even making stuff like you make like paper models and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a completely different vibe. It's a
Yeah.
completely different like interaction with that industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wonder if anyone else has the similar things with me, where it's like architecture feels kind of corporate.
Yeah, I
if
wonder.
that's just me.
It'd be a shame.
You think so?
Yeah, I think it's such an exciting medium. It's long and can be quite slow, but it's like what makes cities what they are.
Yeah.
I just like physically what they are. So I think it's so exciting, and extremely like you say, creative. But you're right, that's what I'm doing every day. So
Yeah, right.
from an outside perspective,
I think that buildings might be underappreciated, and they're kind of just accepted. They're just kind of there, and I don't think people take time to look at them.
yeah,
I think, well, that's my experience with them, and I feel like that might be the overall experience with them. I think there is probably a disconnect with it being like someone, had creative ideas. This was inspired. This was all designed for a reason. Whereas I think me, before this podcast, and I think a lot of other people are going to see it as like a functionality rather than like a piece of art, which is essentially a building's a piece of art.
yeah, I think so.
Whereas I think I'd see it as like, there's a house, it's got 4 rooms, you can sleep in it, there's a kitchen, it functions, it does what it needs to.
I just think there's so much breadth like that. I think sometimes even I think like of it like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Whereas the Sagrada Familia,
Yeah.
go inside there, you're like, this is sick.
Yeah.
So there's an example of something that completely the other end of the spectrum. I don't think anyone's being like, that's a bit shit.
No.
Like, that's just like,
Yeah, it's stunning.
it's just a corporation. It's just a church. Who cares? Just a church, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So I suppose that on the other end of the scale. But then that feels more like an art piece than like a house, I think. Because I think maybe just because it's less in the norm. Like people aren't experiencing that on an everyday basis.
Yeah, and that probably what most people experience is either the house, like you say, which is usually quite a repeated thing that is about functionality, or the other end, which you see a lot of, is the corporation because they've got lots of money and there's like they're always building.
Yeah, they can afford to do it.
Yeah. So what I am most interested in and have been working on so far is kind of the stuff in the middle, where it's a kind of a blend between public spaces, galleries, theatre spaces, education, which I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
So I can now. I guess I can understand how you might have had that viewpoint. I guess I've just been like zoomed in on one area for so long. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think that I am going to try and appreciate buildings on a whole more.
Yeah, I should.
Because
everyone should.
Yeah, I always claim to be like, I love creativity. Creativity is my thing. And then I'm just kind of completely disregarding a whole aspect of it. I'm just disregarding. It's like being like going into an art gallery and seeing a painting and be like, who cares? Like that's just, it's a wall decoration is what it's like, I think. Whereas it's obviously it's not a wall decoration. It's its own piece and it stands on its own.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but that was a perfect analogy.
Well done.
Thanks, man. I feel like we might be done. What do you think? Where are you at? I feel like
we've covered a lot.
This was a really like interesting, in-depth podcast.
I hope I've covered everything that we wanted to talk about. Like I haven't overdone anything or bored anyone.
I don't think we've bored anyone because
With the work stages of.
We're very interesting, and we've changed lives. I don't think we've bored anything. The only thing we haven't discussed is about you leading a project.
Yeah. Well, it's only just started, so.
Okay. Where are you at with that?
So
you're now in the plan. You stage one. You stage one.
I've actually come into the project and we're gonna start it at stage 4.
Whoa! You can't just start at stage 4, dude.
I know.
That's not how projects work.
I'm going against the established.
Yeah, you're just sitting up there in your cloud.
Fortunately, the work stages up to now have been done by someone else in the office whilst I was studying my masters. So I'm coming in at stage 4.
Okay. So has there been any clashes off the bat with that?
No,
because it's not something that you've helped conceive.
No, not really. No, I think it happens quite a lot actually.
Okay.
People come in and off, drop on and off the project. Usually you'll have one leader, project architect, who's taking it the whole way through, but not always. It
does sound like a super collaborative industry.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah.
It's so complex.
Yeah, I believe it.
There's I don't know, 2-3 architects on and off on this project, but then we're going to be working with structural engineer. Like I said, there's a whole design team.
Yeah.
So this project's just been approved for planning. We're just waiting on the green light from the client and their representative, the project manager, for us to go ahead and go into the next phase, which will be more detailing and working out how this thing actually gets put together and all the kind of the junctions between materials and it. Yeah, it's just the next level of design.
Sure. How do you go about choosing materials aside from looking around you?
Yeah.
Or is that it?
No, that's a part of it. We will look at past precedent, so similar buildings that have had a similar agenda, see what they've done. We're also looking at new materials, so new technologies, maybe there's...
Is that ever changing?
Yeah. There's constant change in materials and...
Broke my pen.
It looks like you just snapped your pen.
Snapped my pen. I need to stop going to the gym, dude.
Materials is quite an important choice because it's what people are gonna see straight away.
I think that materials will make or break a building.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go on a limb and say that's a true fact.
I'm gonna say it's.
You agree?
I'm gonna say it's part fact.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take a part fact. I can deal with that.
I think it's really important to get it right. Definitely.
Okay. But I suppose that depends on the tone of the building, what you choose.
Yeah. So for example, this building I'm working on is only it's functional at night. It's a theatre.
Yeah.
So people are going to be using it in the evening. So that's determining what it might look like and what the materials might be. So we're going for a translucent polycarbonate, which is a plastic, but you can't see straight through it. But you do get a lot of light through it.
Yeah.
So we're imagining at night when people are using it, because that's when it's most appropriate to be thinking about the building's use.
That totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, there's going to be loads of amazing lights and kind of warmth that glows outwards from the pavilion, and it's just going to look alive and what a theatre should look like when it's in full swing. So that's what's determined the material choice in that instant. But the reason just could be completely different for something else, like a house. You're going to look at some standard materials because of the cost. And
do you aim for longevity with something like that?
For a house? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so what kind of buildings would you choose something that looked nicer over longevity? Is that, or do those things go hand in hand?
Like a material?
Yeah. Would you ever choose a material that wasn't going to last as long because it looked better for a certain thing?
I think more often not. I think you have to, you have to convince yourself that it was a worthy thing,
like a sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a responsibility as well at the end of the day.
Yeah,
these buildings that we're putting up have to last long because there's expectations, and the client needs, the building needs to do its job for as long as possible. I think it's definitely a responsibility you have.
It still has to function.
Yeah.
It can't just look pretty.
Yeah. I mean, unless you want it to look pretty for a certain amount of time, and then you have an agreement to kind of change the material once it gets worn. That's possible.
Is that happens, does it?
Yeah. I think, it does.
A lot of work.
Yeah, it does. It does happen, and it is a lot of work, and it's tricky contractually because I'm not sure whether an architect would walk into that, because you're essentially agreeing to the building degrading whilst your name it's still your work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So if after 5 years it's just fallen to shit and it gets like snapped or whatever, like photographs taken of it, or it's just not going to do good for your cred.
Yeah, well, that's it.
If your building's just falling apart, it's not a good thing. It's not a good look. That's what I think anyway. I mean,
I think that makes sense. You'd rather a building that doesn't look quite as cool that it is intact.
But you can get cool materials that live long and last and look great.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a massive factor then.
I don't think it's a playoff, really.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is interesting, I think, because I just wondered.
Yeah.
It's one of them.
Yeah. I mean, definitely at Hal Tompkins, we're always looking for robust materials that last long, because that's
that. Say that.
Products.
Sounds
product
like
placement.
a fucking ad read.
Yeah, they're paying me.
Okay, cool.
Well, they literally are paying me.
It's 100% true.
But it's something I believe in as well, completely.
Yeah, I think what you say makes a lot of sense to me. Like, it's got to serve that functionality. You can't really make that sacrifice, because then it's not really doing its job.
No.
And buildings last a long old time.
Yeah, they're supposed to. In reality, they don't.
No?
No.
Is that because they'd get torn down, though, as opposed to them falling down?
It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
No, yeah, they definitely get taken down. But it's sometimes, well, normally it's because the client or a client thinks that they can make more money off the site. Yeah. So they will take it down. Shame. Yeah.
That must be such a ball ache if you're like the main architect of a building that then gets torn down. Like,
it happens
super quick.
I think it's something, if you're an architect, then you just have to come to terms with quite quickly.
Yeah. That's long though.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but also it's just the way that cities change and develop over time. You
don't really get that in a lot of industries, in a lot of creative industries.
Yeah, I guess not actually. That's quite interesting.
Music is like...
Yeah. Lives forever.
Yeah, it does live forever, and like people still listen to some really old tunes.
Yeah.
Whereas, and it's always going to be out there as well, especially with the advent of the internet. I suppose you can always have a picture of a building, but it's not really the same thing.
Yeah, it's quite true. Not really thought about that, and it takes so long to get it built.
Yeah.
And then ideally, you're looking for something that might last 75 to 100, maybe 150 years, but in reality, something, more often than not gets taken down after 20 years, 30 years.
That's lame. Maybe you should start writing books.
Well, it's another like quite hot topic in the circles, is how we can better reuse buildings, and instead of taking them down, strip them back to their like concrete base, and then just work with what you have, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it does sound interesting.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
It goes well with like the recycling, like the place we're at now, where everyone's like people realize that everything needs to be recycled.
Yeah.
Well, and I suppose that, I didn't think about that for buildings. So is that literally just, when you say like a concrete base, is that like the walls and stuff as well? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically taking it back to the structure.
Yeah. Like modernizing it. Because people do that now still, but I guess on a lesser scale.
Yeah.
They like modernize an old building.
Yeah. So I think it depends on it depends on the building, because I think you want like quite a high floor to ceiling span, because then that'll give you the greatest flexibility in what you could change the building into. But yeah, you would take it back to the concrete or steel frame that is just kind of the essentially just like what it is, what's holding it up, and then you would just reclad it and put new finishes and
you build something new from the ashes.
Yeah, exactly, the phoenix.
I love that. Love that. Well, Pierre, it's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. My eyes have been opened to the architecture world, and as I mentioned, we have changed some people's lives.
Yeah, we have.
So you can put that on your resume.
It's there.
If you're looking for a new job, I changed lives. Just that's all you need on there, to be honest.
Okay.
Cool. And then just a little link to this, so they can go and listen to it.
Yeah.
And their lives will be changed. You know, it's a circle. Yeah, I really appreciate you.
It's been great. It's been great. Thanks for talking to me about my favorite thing.
I had a lot of fun with it, dude. I had a lot of fun.
Cool.
That's it. And there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Creative Connection. Hopefully you really enjoyed that and you learned a lot about architecture as a whole. A lot of stuff goes into architecture. I like that the process was a 5-stage process, made it super easy for me. But I found the particularly interesting as I realized that the way I saw architecture was kind of completely different to Pierre, who was actually in architecture, which doesn't surprise me now I think back to it, but it's something I hadn't really given much thought, and I've been thinking about it since this conversation, and really it's all about, because I deal with architecture in a very functional way. Every building kind of has a function as opposed to being some kind of like art piece, so I'm just using it to sleep in, for example, or I'm using it to I don't know, the cinema, like it's got a function, like you go there, you watch it, whereas architects rather deal with it in a completely different fashion, where it's kind of its own thing. For example, if I was to look at a painting, I'd be like, oh, there's an art piece, rather than just like, oh, it's a wall decoration, which I suppose even to that extent, some people probably have the same thing. It's like, oh, that's just for covering up a mark on the wall, whereas others would be like, wow, that is a really interesting, intricate piece of art. Yes, that's right. It's a piece of art. Now, okay, I want you to go and follow Pierre on Instagram and Twitter. That is at Pierre is near. But also, I want you to follow School of Speculation, because I think it's a really interesting project, and I think that let's all rally behind it. Let's all push it forward. And that is at SOS_XYZ_ on Instagram and Twitter. Okay, once you've done that, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Why don't you leave it a 5-star rating, tell your friends, whatever you fancy. You can write a little review even. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well if you want, at the real Jared Emsee. All of these things would just make me very, very happy. And as we know, making me happy is one of the most important things in the world. Alright, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.